That's why we're going on. Good morning, people.
Good morning. We're live. We are
Hey,
live.
hi, James.
We have come back to life. Good morning. Yeah. Hi, Olive. How are you doing?
So we do what we do. We hibernate for the week. Do
Right.
people know that?
So we're actually in the same place. We're just right next to each other in different rooms.
Yeah.
Uh,
And one has a camera and the other one is an artist. Like a what? How do you call those artists?
right. A
A
sketch artist.
sketch artist.
So there's a really interesting development that I heard about, and my mother just sent me this clipping from her local paper. Do you know there's another Julia Child film? Because
Wow.
they did one with Meryl Streep played her, and then they
Okay.
did another one recently. Somebody else played her, and now they've done on HBO. They've done
Wow.
it's a series, and this English actress Sarah Lancaster, who's very good, she plays Julia, and David Hyde Pierce
Oh my God,
plays
that's
her
great.
husband Paul. And it's a series. It's like 6 parts or something, and it covers her
Whoa, that's gonna be
life.
cool.
But that's pretty amazing. Uh, three different film versions of Julia Child's life. Most of it has to deal with. I think all three of them have to deal with how she became who she became. So it starts off with her as this housewife, and she wants to learn how to cook better, and then her husband gets assigned to Paris. So they move to Paris, and she's bored, so she goes to Le Cordon Bleu cooking school and learns how to cook. And then she and these two other women start their own cooking school for American tourists. And then they wrote Mastering the Art of French Cooking and on and on. And then she came back here and got her PBS show in
Wow.
Boston, and she became very, very famous. And she taught a lot of people how to cook. She did a lot of great stuff. She was a real character. She was fun to watch. She was funny. Her shows got
You're talking about
taped.
Julia Child, huh?
Yeah, Julia Child. And her shows in Boston, they would get taped basically without cutting. So they would just turn the camera on, and she would make
Wow.
mistakes. She would drop stuff.
I know, I know.
She
That's
cut
great.
herself once. I mean, she used to do
Wow.
crazy stuff, and they would
Yeah,
just
right,
keep
right, right.
going.
You
And
know, sorry, James, my grandmother went to the same school, right?
oh yeah, Le
That
Cordon.
was because that school was for women.
Right,
It was not it was nothing professional about it. It was just for
right,
women, so they learn how to cook
right,
for marriage. I mean, for
right. Yeah.
so my
And
grandmother went to the
that's what
Cordon Bleu.
Julia
So
went for. That's what she wanted to
well,
do. She
that's
just wanted to be able to cook nice meals for her husband and herself. She never intended to be this big culinary
right,
star,
right, right,
but
right. Yeah, yeah.
it just grew and grew and grew.
So
But
it's no, it's true. So my grandmother, she was like, I mean, talk about the cooking at my house was wow.
wow, between your mom and your grandmother, yeah.
What my mom learned from my grandmother,
Oh, right.
all my aunts. So on my mom's side there were seven siblings, and on my dad's six. So I had
Uh-huh.
like hundreds of cousins. But everybody cooks, and my grandmother was making the most incredible meals. So she would start the day before, and then it takes 48 hours to get to the dinner because she
Right.
would do, if she does a sauce grand veneur, venison, the
Uh-huh.
venison sauce grand veneur, it's a 2 days of cooking. It's a 2 days
Right.
of preparation. It has to marinate in the blood and wine, and then it's a whole thing. But man, the result was absolutely incredible. Uh,
That's
So anyway,
amazing.
yeah, 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 yeah. So the
That's so
cordon bleu
cool. That's
was
so cool that you grew up with that tradition of just
completely,
people
and
making
I've
great food.
well, the thing is, I've met both my great grandmothers,
Wow.
and those are, I mean, my great grandmother, Mimi Jeanne, she lived in Auvergne in next to Saint Etienne. She's never seen a tape recorder. She would doing the old ways, and she would cook the same way my grandmother, right? Because it's
Hmm.
same family. So the food was extremely fresh and very heavy, lots of fat, very little starch actually. But potatoes was always there. Potato is kind of the base, right?
Right.
And then cabbage, lots of cabbage, and then bacon. But I mean, not slice of bacon. It's like the
Yeah.
whole thing, because that's what they were eating in when it's in Auvergne in winter. It's extremely cold. And it's funny because both my great grandmother on my mom's side, one was lived very well and she was very comfortable and she had everything she needed and she died very early. The other one, her husband was a drunk and he would kick her out of the house in winter. Often she would be in the street, in the house, in the snow with the kids. She
Oh
lived
my
to be
God.
100. She lived to be 100. You know, we talked about the
She
cold
probably
wave.
outlived him, huh?
Yeah. But you know, when people say cold is very good, the cold stress is extremely good. You know
Hmm.
those all this stuff about health
Yeah.
and getting an ice bath or cold shower. That's what it does. It's so
Yeah.
you could see that. I've actually experienced that. My other great grandmother from my dad's side was from Algeria, and in my on my dad's side they were in boulangerie making bread and wine also having but they were very poor, huh? Because during the war they took everything away from the Jews,
Hmm.
so there was nothing left. So my mom is uh, they've been cooking since 1750s. So they had restaurants and inns. And what my great grandmother was doing is when people would come, the hunter would come. It was a hunter inn. People would come with their, gibier, the hunt, and
Right.
my grandmother would prepare them. So meanwhile, they were eating something that my great grandmother would do, and then later during the day, when the meat was done, like the pheasant or the pig or whatever, at night they would eat that. It's weird, huh? So you bring your
Yeah.
your your kill and they prepare it. But meanwhile, they would eat something, and one of the main dish that my mom remember was called a mange tout. It's a big piece of
Uh-huh.
lard and egg because they had to eat right
Right.
in the meantime.
And I'll
Oh my
bet
God.
none of them were fat either.
No, no, no. Nobody. There was no fat because the activity of these people is huge. So
Right.
and there was not. They would eat very, very sanely. So what makes you fat is a lot of toxins.
Right.
I know bread is one of them and carbs, but also toxin. Toxin is really the big culprit because toxin goes, the body has to store them in fat. So you end up with that thing in between your organ, and a lot of things is toxins and
Yeah.
or sugar or whatever, right? Anyway,
And also just inactivity. I mean, when you have it, when your life is
yeah.
spent basically sitting down.
I mean, I
Y-
remember when we worked in a farm, we were very little, and we spent some summer in the farm, and sometimes we do help the farmer, and we had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was really bad for us because we are not used to it. We're from
yeah.
Paris, but we got up at 5, and there was no breakfast. The breakfast is a little bit of wine or calvados, not a lot. It's a little. We call
Yeah.
that the dé à coudre, un petit dé. How do you say the need when you
Oh,
sew?
a sewing thimble,
Yeah, so
a
that was a
thimble.
little. And then you have a little piece of lard and piece of cheese, and then you go to the field, right?
Uh-huh.
And then at 8 o'clock, you come back to have the coffee with the bread and the jam and stuff. But
Yeah.
in the morning, when it's cold outside, oh my God, it's cold. That's what you're doing to go work in the field. Calvados, big piece of lard and cheese. And go.
Well, it's interesting when you look at countries and how they cook. I mean, you look at France and people here think, oh, well, they use so much fat and all that stuff. Well, a lot of France is very, very cold in the wintertime, especially if you live on a
Yeah,
farm, if you live up in the mountains. You
it is
eat
cold.
accordingly. I mean, you need food that's going to give your body energy to work and to keep warm
We
and
need
to
a lot of
survive.
protein.
And you look at people that grow up and live in the desert countries, well, they don't cook like that. That's why
No,
they eat a lot of fruit.
right.
They olive oil,
That's
of course, lots of herbs and
that's why it's very difficult for people to understand diet is because we've came from very different environment.
right.
Africa, dry, then very luxurious greeneries, and
Uh-huh.
then when it was dry, the only thing we had to eat was meat.
Hmm. Right.
and that's how we became very, very strong. And that's we're talking about millions of years ago, and it's not just the last 15,000 years. So when people say we're not supposed to eat that, just like eat whatever you want and leave me alone. How about that?
Also, meat was beneficial because, like, I did a lot of reading about Genghis Khan and the Mongols, and they were constantly on the move, and to carry grain and stuff like that
Right?
was very difficult. But if you had cattle, the cattle
Uh,
could walk. You didn't have to
yeah,
carry them. You
exactly.
didn't need a
Yeah,
wagon
exactly.
for them. They just walked behind you, and then eventually you slaughtered one, and you had it. Everybody ate, and you'd move
And it
on.
doesn't
And
go bad.
so,
And it doesn't go bad.
and it doesn't
As
go bad.
staple. So the only thing that would keep is the staple, like the grains, but
Right.
that was not enough. So they
Yeah.
had to add lard because they need protein. They needed to add a bunch of stuff. And I'm always, it's just like it's interesting. People think that in the before 20,000 years ago, I'm just talking before agriculture,
Hmm.
which it's still a very small part of the evolution. I people think what that they walk around the nature and then there's a field of carrots, right,
Right.
from the sky, whatever, or zucchinis or like, no, there was none of that. So I don't know, man. It's like it's interesting, right? Yeah, we're
Yeah.
foragers. We can eat some berries. That's pretty much it. And then
Right.
some roots when we know, and then the rest was all animal. And it was butter, and it was lard, and it was eggs, and it was whatever you could kill. And basically, you dry the meat.
Right.
You dry the meat. You make cheese. That's what you eat. And nuts. Nuts was very prevalent. And then the bread came after agriculture, not before. There was none of that.
Right.
So anyway.
Well, agriculture requires peace with your neighbors, because if you're going to grow crops,
Oh
you
yeah, right.
can't be at war, because it takes time, and the
Oh
fields have
yeah,
to be left alone. And as far
that's
as eating
true.
wild foods, it took centuries and many generations of people
Right.
experimenting and figuring out what could be eaten, what
Totally.
couldn't be eaten, watching the animals, seeing what they ate. And that's not something that just happened overnight. That took a long, long time to figure out all that stuff.
Also, they had to experiment with the vegetables themselves. I mean, look at cabbage, just the example of cabbage. Cabbage, you could not eat cabbage. It was very poisonous.
Uh-huh.
They had to make a cultivar. They had to make the cabbage we eat today has nothing to do, and the carrots. The carrots we eat today has nothing to do with the wild carrot they used to find. They were purple and very bland. They were not sweet at all. They were very
Right.
alkaline. Now
Yeah.
those pink, those nice, what is that, orange carrots? This
Uh-huh.
is all new stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. And who, figuring out how to eat an olive. Anybody that's ever been around an olive tree knows you can't pick an olive off an olive tree and eat it. It would make you
yeah.
ill. First of all, it would be very difficult to eat, and it's got so much stuff in it that would upset your stomach. It just would
It's
not be
very
good.
tannic. It's
Yeah.
very tannic. Those
And
tannins, which could be very good, they could kill you.
yeah, yeah. So
So what happened?
I mean, that probably took generations for people to figure
Right.
that out. One
Yeah,
theory
yeah,
is that the original wild olive trees grew near the
yeah.
sea in Cyprus, and or was it Syria? But anyway, the olives would, when they would ripen, they would fall off into the tide pools that would be near the trees, and so they would, that when, of course, those were all salt water, so they would basically cure in there. And then somebody eventually figured out that after they sat in that salt water long enough, you could eat them. Do you ever record these sessions? Oh my
It's
God,
on.
no! That would be evidence in court. Yes, we do. They're on
If
YouTube.
James, if we make it to court,
Yeah.
we
Yes,
might
these
be
are
lynched.
we show these on a little device that we invented. Actually, it's called YouTube, and they're all on there.
It's on YouTube at Kitchen on Fire. Yes, yes, Jessica. How are you?
So
Good.
I had a topic I thought we could discuss today because it's so interesting. I think we
Oh,
touched on it once.
James, I know
What?
you wanted to talk about your hair loss, but I think that's not a good day.
Really? I thought maybe
because
somebody
we
would call in and
no
have some advice.
we need a new camera for you so we can understand what the problem is.
I see.
I
Well,
see.
that's right. Yeah, well that goes back to hunting. That's why the early hunters, they didn't have to buy toupees because they could just take a piece of the pelt and put it right up
Oh
there.
yeah, hunting.
Yeah,
Hunting determine. I mean, we can go on evolution, but you have to understand that. I mean, it's very complex. We could maybe give few information if we show, but evolution is interesting because when you think of it, our digestion is standing up, right? You see
right,
how everything is falling. When we used to be like that, it's different, right? The
right.
weight is different. So the way we're built as digestion is completely different up. So when we sit down all day long now, we are changing again that we need that gravity. This is how we are built. We walk and we have gravity, and this is how it flows, right? So when we sit all the time, or when the Roman they used to eat like this, it's supposed to be good. I don't think so, right? It's not meant to be.
Hmm.
So yes, we can sit. Of course, we can sit, but we can't sit the whole day because it's not that the body, the circulation works. So anyway, so that's
Yeah,
another
we're
point.
we're a very unique mammal because we're the only one that walks upright, and this has caused problems for our spines too. That's why so many people have back trouble because we were never really meant to move in this way.
Well, no,
So,
we became like this because
hmm,
of many things. First of all, we could see further when we're hunting. We
right.
can carry stuff as we walk,
These opposable thumbs were a huge invention
right? So there's a lot of things that,
because you know why we developed opposable thumbs so that we can text easier. So
the text came before the thumbs, or thumbs came before the.
we developed the thumbs over several, 100,000
I know,
years just
like
so we
monkey.
could get to the point where we could text.
Next is taking with one hand. That's the best. Anyway, so yeah, so when you want to talk about food and diet, you want to make sure you understand you add all the arguments for and against, and the way we stand, the way our digestive system is. It's very short. The teeth that we have, our mandible, the
Hmm.
muscle here. That's
Right,
really important also because monkeys, the herbivore monkeys have a huge muscle. It's very big. It can really grind on stuff. We can't. We have a very small, muscle jaw. So there's a lot of things that needs to be included into a debate, and
right.
not just like
And
talking
large mammals like big cats, big bears, wolves, things, they have teeth that can
Oh yeah,
rip meat off because they would eat the meat raw, of course, and they would rip it off the carcass that they had just killed.
yeah.
And we'd have a very hard time doing that. We'd probably hurt our teeth if we tried to do that, but
We use tools.
we use tools. Again,
We use tools
opposable
to break the
thumbs.
bones, and to
And we
eat
have fire, so we can cook it too, which breaks it down so that it's easier to eat and to digest. Very interesting. Very interesting.
we should talk about fire next time.
Yes.
How the fire came to play in our evolution. Anyway,
Yeah. Um,
cool. All right. So you wanted to talk, Chef, about olive oils,
we
right?
we used to answer questions a lot in our old podcast, and we're going to go back to that a little bit. But we had tons of questions from students at Kitchen on Fire who would do an exit survey, and they would get to ask a question of the chef. And so we would take these questions and we would use them as the basis for discussion on the show. And I remember we had one question from a woman who asked what she should do if her honey got hard. And I think we told her to tell him to take a cold shower.
What's his name? Kush.
And then eventually we figured out what she actually meant.
Kush.
Eventually we figured out she was talking about honey, the uh,
So,
the product from bees. And the answer to that question, of course, is you just set it into some hot water for a while until it turns back to liquid. And what happens when you do that, when you heat it, it splits those sugar molecules again so that it becomes liquid again and back into its
right.
honey state. But it made me think about it, and it made me think about honey because I really love honey.
Yeah.
and it's a very, very, very interesting food. It's an ancient food. Um, People used to. I read that there was a Neolithic rock paintings in Spain that they found near Valencia that showed, and this was so this goes back before agriculture, before written communication, before anything. These were just crude pictures on a wall of a cave, but it
Right.
showed men harvesting honey, wild honey, of course.
Oh
They
yeah.
didn't,
Wow.
and so people have been eating honey for, and once they figured out that you could take smoke and drive away the bees out of the
Right.
hive and then take all the honey, and that
Right.
the bees would then just come back and they would just start rebuilding again.
It doesn't drive them away. It confuses them because they
Confuses them. It
can't
drives them
communicate.
down to the ground.
No, they can't communicate between themselves.
Right, right.
So
And
that
the
they can't
reason
they
the
can't
reason
yeah.
bears and badgers eat honey so much is because they have extremely thick skin and fur, so they're impervious to bee stings. Um, I went there and they were closed because a busload of kids filled the place just before I got there. Huh?
Where was that?
You must mean the caves where these cave drawings were.
Oh,
So by the
it was
time,
you, Kenny. Kenny, it was you drawing on the caves.
yeah, no, it's all those kids. They had crayons.
Uh,
So what is honey? Honey is it is made from, it is the sweetness that comes from the nectar of certain flowering plants. And the reason these plants produce this nectar is very simple. They produce it to attract the bees and other insects and other birds and things that come and eat the nectar, but then they go to another plant to eat more nectar, and when they do that, they pollinate things. They move the pollen around because the pollen all sticks to their feet and their heads and their beaks, and when they fly around to this, and that's how flowers have sex, basically. You
yeah,
didn't know this was going to be an R-rated show. And
you know they
honey, oddly enough, honey is actually much sweeter than regular sucrose, but it's not that sweet on the palate because it has all these different flavorings in it from the flowers. So depending on the source, clover, different wildflowers, it has these different substances that it kind of mitigates the sweetness on the palate, which I thought was very interesting. And the first
but they
written reference to honey that they know of is from Egyptian times, from 5500 BC. So if they were writing about it in 5500 BC, they were doing it long before that.
5500 BC. So
Right. So that's
that's
seven and a half, 8,000 years ago.
right. So that's the Egyptians. So we believe that Egyptians are much older than 3500, but the only source we have of Egyptian culture was 3500 BC. So
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know it looks like they were here way before that, like way
Yeah.
before, but we don't have
Yeah.
any written trace from
Right.
that. But it looks like Egypt was really, really, really old. But when you
Hmm.
go back to I mean, the oldest that I know of is Jericho, 9000 BC, right?
Right.
So Jericho is one of the first town or city built big enough to show. So anyway, that would be has to be researched
Well, and they think
because
that.
the Egyptian the trace we have is 3500 BC. After that, before that, it's very possible, and they keep finding stuff that shows that Egypt might be much older than that. But I don't think there is any trace of that anyway. So honey was there, yes, from the beginning, because that's something that people have understood right away, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
And agriculture came in what 15,000, seventeen
Something like
thousand years
that.
ago. So
Yeah.
that's what, as soon as the agriculture started, 5,500 BC, the Mesopotamia. So
Yeah.
5,500 BC, it's more like, I mean, from what I understand, it's more like 3,500 BC. Everything before is kind of vague, and we're talking about civilization that have built stuff. So the Sumerian, the Akkadian was the first one, and Mesopotamia, meso means in between, river. So the Tigre and the Euphrates, and
Hmm.
Mesopotamia is everything in between those those rivers. Mesopotamia.
Right. Right.
So yes,
Yeah. And
it was actually Syria today, Iraq, Syria,
hmm.
Iraq, and then yeah. So the Akkadian and the Sumerian was the ancient civilization that we know of. That's why it started. But there was other people before that. I'm just saying about the civilization that built stuff and have written stuff that we can. Anyway,
Right. Well, before that, civil cultures tended to be more nomadic. Even though they
yeah,
might stay in a particular
yeah,
area,
exactly.
they didn't build cities. They didn't build
Like the
permanent
Indo-European,
structures.
for example, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Indo-European are before that.
And I think when cultures began to do when they began to engage in agriculture and they began to build towns, it's when they were in a place long enough that they could it allowed them to really study the environment better so that they could, study the herbs and the roots and the what the bees did. And
And like you
originally,
said,
oh, go
and
ahead.
like you said before, James. No, no. What you said before was interesting. No, no, really, I mean it. When you said that you have to have peace with your neighbor. So
Yeah.
it's true that in order to create a civilization, unless you're a conqueror, which is always happening, right? You need to
Mhm.
be friends with your neighbors at some point and have
Right.
some type of arrangement. Um,
Right. That's one of the
a
reasons
ziggurat,
to build a ziggurat.
ziggurat. Yeah, do that. Can you do it and send us a picture?
Yeah. Um, that's why the olive branch became the symbol of peace in the
Right.
Bible, because an olive tree it takes something like 5 to 7 years before an olive tree will produce fruit. So obviously that's not something you do in a nomadic culture. It's certainly not something you do if you're constantly at war with everyone,
Right.
because you can't
Yeah.
carry an olive tree with you.
It was a lot of arrangement between civilization, even though they conquer each other. But you have to understand that that's always been like this. I mean,
Yeah.
any civilization in the world, it's always the same. Some people that are in power need something, they go and get it, and they go and get it by force. That
Hmm.
was the only way that was happening until, I mean, forever. That's
Well, yeah, and back then, if you saw a group of people that had an olive grove that was really
yeah,
successful, that was well
yeah,
cultivated and
yeah,
producing lots of olives, you might just go in and conquer them
yep,
so that you can
yep,
have that. Today, we conquer people for a different kind of oil.
right.
Um, I'd rather have
So the
olive.
olive, so the olive oil today, James. So I get a lot of questions. What should I buy? Was it good? And it's very difficult to answer because we don't have a straight. I mean, there's not an easy answer because how do you know where olive oil is? Is it? How do you know that? I mean, what
Yeah,
what do you know from reading a bottle? What would you? How would you know what to buy?
it's very difficult, and my advice to people is to know your source, know the people that you are buying the olive oil
Right,
from. I
right.
mean, even the merchant. I mean, if you buy from, if you buy olive oil at Safeway, there's really no way to tell unless you are familiar with the brand. A good merchant will allow you to taste different oils. They'll have
Yeah,
oils out for tasting. Maybe not all of
yeah.
them at
Great.
once, but they'll always have something to taste. That's a good indication.
That's great.
Um, the olive oil is a tough business because there's so much shenanigans that go on.
But
But
California has a special. Basically, anything from California is good because of the regulation, right?
yeah, yeah, if you buy a California olive oil, you can be reasonably assured that it's actually olive oil. The problem with a lot of California olive oils is that they harvest them too ripe. And they like that because the riper an olive gets, the more oil you get out of it. I think I remember them telling me to buy local organic. So I've been buying organic California olive from Trader Joe's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's always a
If
good
you
idea. Buying
uh,
local and organic is always a good idea.
and Jessica,
Um,
if you like it, if it tastes good, then stick with that because your nose is your primary judge.
um, anyway, California, the more ripe an olive is, the easier it is to extract the oil, and but it's not necessarily the best oil. And so when you harvest green olives, there's not as much oil, but it's much better oil. It's much higher in the organoleptic properties. It's much higher in the pheno, what do they call them?
Polyphenols. It's polyphenol.
Polyphenols that are,
It's
you know, all that
oleoropane.
antioxidants and everything.
Oleoropane.
So it's really much better for you when they harvest it green.
So,
So
so James, one thing also, and this is something that, well, maybe you know, I've I like olive oil that stays longer with the pit and the meat rather than first press. I
hmm,
like it better when it sits in there because I get more antioxidant. And this is something from studies I've read. And basically, when you get the olive oil that stays longer with the olives, you get way more antioxidants. As if it's a fresh first press, it's extracted immediately. It might be better for the flavor or whatever, but I know for sure you don't get as many antioxidants. Do you know about this? I mean,
I'm not sure. I know that cold pressing is better because one way to
right.
get more oil out of the olives is to flush it with hot water, and then you're washing away a lot of the flavor and a lot of the positive chemical properties. So cold pressing means you just crush the olives
Yeah,
and you don't add anything to get more
right,
olive out. You can use a centrifuge.
right. So
Um,
cold is important for the heat,
yeah, you don't want to get it near heat at all. In
right?
fact, when you
But then,
store your olive oil at home, you want to keep it out of light and you want to
yeah,
keep it away from heat. Those are the two enemies of olive oil.
there's
Uh,
three enemies.
well, and
There's
air too.
oxygen,
Yeah,
so oxidation, and then the light. You know how it works? It's very easy. This bottle is very dark, right?
yeah,
So the light, the light that goes in are called photons, and photons goes in a clear bottle, and they start this process of creating a bunch of free radicals.
right.
If they can't get in, it's not gonna happen. That's why it's always in a can or really dark. And then once you open it, then oxygen start to come and oxidize the oil. So as soon as you open it, it lasts, I don't know.
Well,
So
it starts to deteriorate. That's why you don't want to leave it
right,
open. You want to use it and then cover it
right,
immediately.
right.
I keep my olive oil in a cupboard because just
Yeah,
keep it away from the light. And you don't want to keep it on top of your stove. That's a
right,
really bad
right,
idea.
right.
It's too much
Okay.
heat.
And you want to
Um,
eat it pretty quickly because first of all, it's good for you. There's no reason to like do a drizzle.
yeah,
You want to go at it, right? And as
yeah,
I would always say, if you don't eat too much carb, you can eat whatever you want as far as fat goes. Fat and
yeah,
protein. It's when
yeah.
you start to put bread and rice and stuff like this, then you need to slow down on the fat because you're gonna. But
Yep.
if you don't eat very little carb, you can go and have fun with that olive oil. I eat lots of oil and protein, so
We use a ton of olive oil in our house, but
oh,
I
it
also
smells.
use, I also like butter. I don't use
Me
as
too.
much butter as I use olive oil, but I like butter. I like
Yes,
butter more as a spread than a cooking medium.
right. So that's good, Jessica. That's a good call. Exactly. Don't buy anything big, anyways. I mean, when you go right, unless you're gonna use it.
If you use it in very, very high quantities, then that's fine.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you're just a normal family and you cook with olive oil, you probably shouldn't buy giant containers of it because it's just going to oxidize
We don't
and
say norm. We don't say normal anymore, James. There's a lot of words we need to remove from our
oh, that's
vocabulary.
right. What is normal? I mean a normal size. If you're not cooking for 50 people every
Yeah,
day. I mean
these are good.
if you're cooking for
Liters.
2 to 4 people.
And if you don't use a lot of olive oil, you should keep them in the fridge. It's not good because you can't pour it, but that will last a long time. So you're gonna have to basically the problem is it has to soften. So
Right.
you have to put it out. It's kind of a pain, right? But if
Yeah.
you don't eat a lot, or if you go to in vacation or something, you can put that olive oil in the fridge. Absolutely, that will keep it longer.
Well, that kind of defines the difference between a fat and an oil is that an oil is liquid at room temperature, and a fat is like what we think of fat is a solid at room temperature, like lard or butter.
Saturated, saturated.
Yeah, saturated fats.
Saturated has so basically it's unsaturated because of that kink that enable the oil to be supple. So there's
Mm-hmm.
at least so olive oil is a mono unsaturated, means there's only one double bond carbon that can,
Uh-huh.
and then the other one is polyunsaturated, which Lisa and I, Lisa, my business partner, we always say don't eat those. Okay, don't eat those polyunsaturated fat. They're really terrible for you, but that's me. Seed oil, for example, all these seed oil, everything, terrible. It oxidizes really fast, and it may change your formation of your cell membrane. Anyway, so it's
Also, and they
another.
they require a lot of processing to get them to
Yeah,
a
and they're
state where
bad
you can
and they're
use them.
probably bad in the bottle already. They're already oxidized,
Yeah.
and that's something you do not want to eat. And remember at the beginning of the show, I was talking about toxins. Well, that's one of the toxins.
Hmm.
Anything toxic makes you big.
What about nut oil?
Same, it's the same. Nuts are fantastic when you chew them, but they react very quickly with oxygen, photons, and heat and everything. Extremely, extremely fast. For a saturated fat, I can leave the butter outside. The bacon, here, this is my bacon. This has been here for like, I don't know, weeks, right? You think it's gonna go bad? Absolutely not.
Uh-huh.
This has been out for weeks. Seriously, I completely forgot about it. It's, mm. If you leave it too long, it tastes a little bit oxidized. So this has been, I forgot it. Actually, no, I taste bacon.
Yeah.
But normally, no, no, seriously, like it's going to take forever to go bad because it's saturated. So there's no, can't break that. You see, that's the thing with saturated fat. It cannot be broken,
Yeah,
oxidized basically. So this is what we want. We want something that does not oxidize in the body or even before. This is super important.
that's interesting. You talked too about how your mother, when she would roast a chicken, she wouldn't put it in the refrigerator afterwards. She would leave it
We
out,
we
and
don't
everybody would
we
pick
don't
at
put
it the next day.
we don't in general in France when you go to the countryside anyway, there's always a piece of chicken or turkey or whatever a roast beef outside. Pate. It stays outside.
Yeah.
People just, it's like,
Yeah,
there was no
because if you put it in
refrigeration
the
before.
refrigerator, you've got to let it sit out for a while anyway to get
But
it
there
to
was no
room
refrigerator
temperature.
in the old days. See, you have to understand, refrigerator is new.
Yeah,
That didn't exist before that. And okay, that's great. I mean, it's really good because it keeps the food way longer and we can actually prepare more food and keep it. But before
fresh
you
food.
don't prepare that
Fresh
much food.
food.
Right. But in the old days you make food every day.
Right,
Like you cook all the time. So you don't need to keep it. You eat whatever you have. And
right,
that's the thing. Now you have to, because of you don't have a market down your street. You have to go far away, shop and cook for a few days. So of course you need to refrigerate stuff, right? So it's a completely different, and now people take advantage of that, and they don't even cook anymore. They buy the food that someone else made, put them
right,
in the refrigerator. You have no idea what's in there, no idea.
right.
And then they think they're healthy, and they're not. But how do you want to argue with that? I mean, look, it's good what I eat. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Great. Did you cook it? No.
But you're right. All these foods that are cured through time and salt and air, like ham, bacon, dried
Yeah,
sausages, cheese, hard
fantastic food.
cheeses,
Really
they
good food.
they don't really need to be refrigerated. They're cured. They're not going bad. I mean, eventually, what'll happen is they'll dry out if you leave them
Yeah,
out too long,
they just dry. They
A-
just dry.
and they might not be very good after a while because they're too dry. And but you can also cook with them. I mean, a sausage gets too dried out, you can chop it up, throw it in a pan, and cook it with some oil, and have it be the base of
Or
something.
you can use it as a piece of flavoring, right? Like we
Right,
do the ham bone. Remember when you put that in
right,
there for a soup? That's
right,
really good. And I mean, that's the thing. Fat from animal will give you incredible amount of flavors in a dish,
right.
like really incredible. There's not many fats that do that except olive oil a little bit, but that's pretty much it after that. And since we know that fat is the transfer of flavor, I mean, unless you,
It's the vehicle for flavor. It's where all the
right,
flavor is in the meat.
right.
Yeah. I've talked about this before where somebody said that if it was possible to remove every bit
Yeah,
of fat from a
yep,
piece of beef and a piece of lamb, that
yep.
you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You couldn't,
No,
because there'd be no flavor, so you wouldn't
right.
know.
And that's the thing. When you eat the food from an animal, you can taste what they were eating almost. If it's a good animal, you can almost taste like what's in there. Like sometimes you're gonna
Right.
feel the rosemary or whatever because that's the flavor. Those are the oil they go in the fat
And
of the animal.
those wonderful goat cheeses that you get in France that are made
Oh
from
yeah,
raw milk, and they're made from specific areas. You can taste the wildflowers and the
absolutely,
herbs, and
absolutely, of
everything's
course.
in there because it's a pretty fresh cheese too. So you're still getting all those fresh
Yeah.
herby flavors in the cheese, which is why it's so great. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't know, guys, you know that just remember something. If you're not sure about a food, try to see what was available before 1900 and kind of stick to that. What was available before 1900? Not all of those, right? That came after industrialization.
Right.
This is where they start to make tons of money on food and trying to incorporate really crappy stuff. This is where you need to like, oh, right?
Yeah. And
And
avoid the snack food. Snack food
no, no
is
snack. Snack is not.
generally,
You should never snack. Never
you should
snack.
eat a meal and
It's your meal.
satisfy yourself and not have to snack.
Yeah, I mean. Oh, hey James. By the way, it's my birthday tomorrow.
Oh, that's
I
right.
just no, I just realized because it's 4/11. That's so crazy.
That's right. I
So
have
I'm
it
gonna
marked on
be.
my calendar. So happy
Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah. Thank you. So you can remind me tomorrow, please. Don't
Oh
forget to
yeah,
remind me. Please.
advertising was the worst thing that happened to American health in probably modern times.
Plain yogurt is fantastic
Yeah. Avoid
because it's some.
avoid flavored yogurts because they have a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
sugar in them and a lot of
Thank you, thank you.
flavorings. And there's no
61.
point. Get plain yogurt and then flavor it yourself. Put
Yeah.
some honey in it, cut up some fruit.
Thank you, guys.
Uh,
Thank you, thank you. Happy birthday. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So you're gonna
61,
be.
man.
Oh, I thought you were gonna be 49 again.
I was going to, and then I changed my mind. I'm like,
Uh,
whatever. Let's not lie.
you're kind of bored with that age.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Um, Plain no, yogurt is fantastic, Jessica. Yogurt is fantastic. Make sure, I mean, the best one are the goat yogurt if you can bear the flavor. And if you like the sweetener, put a little bit of honey. It's fantastic. I used to trick my boy like this when he was young. He would not eat yogurt plain.
Yeah.
So he would eat the sweet one, which has like 40 grams of sugar. So what I would do, I would deck a yogurt and I would put a teaspoon of strawberry jam or a teaspoon of honey. And that was plenty of sugar. And he
Yeah.
loved it. Boom, done.
Yeah. Jam's a good one too, and just a little spoonful
Yeah, little
mixed
spoon.
into
It's
your bowl of
nothing.
yogurt.
A teaspoon
Um,
or 2 teaspoons is much better than 37 grams.
yeah.
What's a teaspoon? 10 gram or something, or 4 grams? It's
I
not
don't
much. I
know.
forgot, but it's not a
I
lot.
was never
Okay,
good
so.
in math. But all that super
Sheep
processed and
yogurt.
flavored stuff. Sheep's milk yogurt is fine.
That is fantastic.
Sheep sheep milk has got a lot of fat in it, and
It's
so
good. Good.
it's really
Everything
really
is really.
flavorful and it's really satisfying.
Oh yeah,
Cow's
that's
milk
fantastic.
yogurt is fine too, as long as you get it that has active cultures. Um, we've been buying a lot of Greek yogurt, which is just yogurt
Yep.
that's been
Yeah. Great.
strained basically to remove more moisture, so it's thicker. We like the texture a lot.
Now
Um,
don't throw it away. It's tons of protein, people. I've
yeah.
seen that. I've seen people opening yogurt and dump that liquid.
Oh
That's
God, no!
way.
Just stir it in.
This
Just
is
stir it right
yeah,
in.
stir it in if you don't want to drink it. It's full of protein. It's incredible food.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. We eat yogurt a lot. We give yogurt to the little ones. They all love it with a little something in it. We use yogurt to instead of milk for like oatmeal and things. Instead of pouring milk on your oatmeal, just put a little spoonful of yogurt on and mix it in, and gives it a little creaminess. It's It's really
I like
good.
eggs in the morning, but that's me. I was going to cook a liver, chef. I got some liver, and
Oh,
I'm sure people are grossed out, but I love liver. I eat lots of liver, by the way, guys.
do you?
Yes,
I I should
at least once or twice a week. Absolutely.
I should try your liver sometimes because it was the one thing growing up as a kid that I
Well,
hated when my mother
it's
cooked
hard.
liver.
It's hard. So what you can do, James, and it's something I really recommend to my son, for example, beef liver pills. You know those little desiccated pills? You
Mm-hmm.
should eat that regularly. This is fantastic. If you can't eat liver, you need to eat those pills. You know, it's a dried liver. It's like, what I like about liver is preformed vitamin A, which is really your most efficient, like, it's good for so many things. And smokers, especially vitamin A, it's called preformed vitamin A. It's what you get from
Uh-huh.
meat, not the vitamin A you get from vegetables, which is a little bit different. Okay.
You
Anyway.
could also give up smoking, but that's hard to do. And smoking's fun and it
It's not
makes you
just for
look.
smoke, but like also for pollution. It's good for a
Oh,
lot of
right,
things, right?
right.
It's just like whatever. If you like,
Yeah.
the air in cities is so terrible, you need to take care of your lungs, and that's one of the aspects. Watercress do that. So I'm gonna cook my liver, guys. I hope you don't mind.
No, let's see how you do it.
The trick is high heat, quick, both side, and dump a bunch of lemon or vinegar, a bunch of acid. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So I bought this thing. I bought the pricier one. They're the shittiest one. I'm serious. The cheaper one, the red one, those are really good.
Uh-huh.
The cheaper, this one is more expensive. The fancy one is piece of crap.
Maybe you're
I
out of
get it.
gas.
Nope. No, it does that sometimes. It's just a pain, but there you go. So I'm gonna make some liver, guys. We can keep going on the discussion, but
Okay.
that's the thing is I love this is calf liver. You can do chicken liver. Beef liver is really good but strong. And
Maybe that's the problem that my mother always bought beef liver and it
beef
was
liver is strong.
probably not the best, huh?
It's strong.
Yeah.
It's strong, lots of nutrients, but it's strong. So chicken liver, why don't you do that?
I like chicken livers, especially when we used to cook them and make them into like a spread and put them on toast.
So I'm gonna wait until the pans gets really hot, people, okay? I'm gonna use a high temperature oil, which is rice bran oil. Rice bran oil. This is the only oil that is not saturated that I'm gonna use. So I like avocado oil, rice bran, and then I'm gonna use all saturated fat, bacon fat, chicken fat, beef tallow, all this stuff, pork fat, and then what else? Olive oil and coconut. Ooh, I love coconut. Coconut oil, fantastic. Coconut oil, I can't cook it too high, but it's
Right.
really good oil for you. Okay, it's fantastic food. All those traditional stuff. So I want to wait until the pan gets really hot, and I'm gonna salt my liver, and I'm gonna put it and not touch it. So I'm gonna put a bunch of salt. Right, salt is very important. I'm very generous with my salt. Okay, almost like if I didn't pay for it. Bunch of salt. Salt might help. Some people they don't put enough salt in their food, right?
Yeah.
And it kills the bland. So I'm waiting. Okay, so this is ready. All right, so I'm gonna put a bunch of
Well,
oil.
you say you're
This
very
oil,
generous. You say you're
yeah,
very
this
generous with salt, but I don't remember you ever
true.
giving me any.
So you guys, this is too much salt, too much oil. I'm gonna dump some on. Now, a little bit too much, right? So before I go now, but I need enough. Now this oil, I'm not gonna eat. This is dead. Okay, just I want so it's fine. And now look what I do. Salted side first. Look, I'm gonna slide it out to make sure the oil stays in. Same here, right? Now it's gonna stick to the pan. It's okay. It's gonna stick to the pan. It's okay. Okay. When it stops sticking, I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna switch it. Okay. So That's enough. I'm not gonna overcrowd the pan. Now I'm gonna salt the other side. And put some pepper, and I'm gonna leave it like this. Okay? And that's gonna go. I'm gonna open the window, the door, because it's gonna stink really hard.
You set your fire alarms off.
No. And that's it. And you don't touch it. Leave it alone. And then when I flip it in a little bit, I'm gonna add saturated fat is good. Paul, it's what we were raised with.
Paul Greenberg. Hey, Paul.
Just remember that we were raised with. Remember how it was before. Just keep that in mind. Okay?
Yeah, saturated fat has really been given a bad name. I mean, there are people that have made their careers out of convincing people that saturated fat was bad. And really what's bad is not the saturated fat, it's what you eat all around it. It's all the other
Yes.
stuff that gets consumed with saturated fat, like in
Yeah.
snack foods and
Totally.
prepared foods and things, and lots of
And
carbs.
bread and carbs, and that's the
Yeah.
thing. Doesn't stop. Now, if you want to know if it's sticking or not, what you do is this: you push it. Okay, not ready, not ready, not ready, not ready. Ooh, this one wants to move, maybe. Ooh, let's see that guy. Almost. Okay, give it a nice crust, James. If you don't do that, it boils and it's not good. Tastes
Mm,
like, right?
yeah.
Has to be nice and crispy on the outside. Same on the other side. Out. Deglaze vinegar, put it out. I like to put thyme, like the thyme or sage or whatever, right? So
Uh-huh.
you know my herbs. Remember, I keep my herbs kind of like randomly. This is how I dry my herbs, right? I just leave them on the tray, just like that. See, and they dry. So this is my thyme. Beautiful. Let's see. Oh yeah. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, now it doesn't stick anymore. Look at that. Whoa. Oh my God. Jesus.
Those look good enough to eat.
I know, right? Little thyme.
Now, see, if my mother
Ooh.
had cooked liver like that when I was a kid, maybe I would have eaten it.
Yep. And after that, I'm going to deglaze with vinegar and lemon. Pretty cool, huh? Smells really good. So I'm going to let it burn on the other side.
So, in other words, after you cook those, you're going to make a sauce. You're not going to
I'm
put
going to
the acid
deglaze
right
with
on the.
vinegar. So the
Yeah.
oil is gone. So I don't care. It's fine. I didn't put too much. That oil I'm using doesn't burn. You see what I mean? So I'm not
Uh-huh.
have to. I don't have to worry about it. I can put a drop of. It's good. And I'm going to serve that. I'm going to deglaze with vinegar and out. Good.
Mm-hmm.
For the vinegar, maybe you can talk about this one. I'm using this guy.
Can't see it. Oh,
Uh, sorry. Yeah.
it's white
My.
wine vinegar.
My.
Oh my. Yeah, it's a French brand. They make mustard and vinegar. Good stuff.
Oh, you want
Vinegar's
to see it
great as
done?
long as it's all natural. It's the best stuff in the world. It's ancient. It's the bacteria, the little yeasts that create vinegar that eat the alcohol and turn it into acid. They're the oldest substances on earth. They're the basis of life. It's miraculous stuff. Vinegar is the best thing in the world. You should always have several kinds of vinegars in your kitchen.
Yeah,
I always
absolutely.
have at least 2 or 3 different red wine vinegars.
All right.
I like champagne vinegar, balsamic vinegar, sherry
I'm
vinegar.
I'm ready to finish the dish. So this is it.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna put some vinegar.
So you're going to
We're gonna
start
cook.
deglazing it even before you take the meat out.
Yeah, and we're gonna cook it that just like that. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put out. This is out. And I'm gonna put some butter in there. Whoa. Whoa. Be cool. Oh my God. Jesus. Right.
Now
I'm
you're going
gonna
to cook that down a little first.
yeah, a little bit, and then put a piece of butter, and we're done.
Now when you
And
put
that
the butter in, you want to turn the heat off, right?
yes,
Because you don't want to burn the butter. You want it to just sort of emulsify into that sauce and create a nice creamy.
So I'm going to shut it off, right? Off. I'm going to put my butter, which is in the fridge. Ah, shit, I forgot.
Oh, well, next time we'll have to talk about mise en place.
Yeah. What are you
Having all
trying to
your
say?
ingredients right
What are
there
you
to
trying?
grab.
What are you trying to say?
I don't mean to
So
criticize.
I'm using a French style butter. Can you explain that to people that are watching?
It means it's got a lot more fat in it. The
That's right.
typical American butter has about 80% butter fat in it. And a lot of the butters that come from Europe,
Okay.
especially France, have more like 88, 90%.
That's right. So
So
this is my
what you
butter.
get, and what that means is there's less moisture in there. So when you cook with it, you get creamier sauces. It doesn't spatter as much, and it's much better for you, and it's much more flavorful.
Now, look what I do. I'm gonna take the juice from the liver that's coming out of the plate, right?
Mm-hmm. Pour it
Go
back
back,
in.
right?
Right.
And then that goes on top.
And that is the best way in the world to make a sauce for meat.
Whoa, look at that. Clean that.
That looks delicious. What are you going to drink with that? You don't drink wine anymore.
Beer. Not right now because it's too early, but
It's 5 o'clock
yeah,
somewhere in the world.
I know, right? So this is what it looks like. Ooh, and I'm gonna put
Nice.
some lemon. Okay, look at that. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Nice and dark, beautiful
Well, I wish
little.
I was there because I'd love to taste it. I'd love to be convinced that I
I can
could
bring you some. I can
eat
skip
liver.
a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't drink wine anymore. I know it's crazy. It's been.
If you come by Cesar tonight, bring some. I'm there. I'm going to be tending bar.
I'll bring you a piece of that. Okay, I'll pack that for you. It's really good.
No, Jessica, he's not going to be allowed back in France because he doesn't drink wine anymore.
I drink beer.
It doesn't agree with you, right?
Yep, I drink beer and tequila. Tequila makes me good.
Yeah, I love tequila.
You guys,
Tequila
oh
and
my
beer
God,
is
it's already 1:57 minutes. 1 hour and 57 minutes.
uh-huh.
So we're done. All right,
I
James.
drink tequila too. I think tequila is good for
Love
you,
tequila.
especially
Oh
if
my
you
God.
drink it in small quantities.
Yeah. Hey,
I
James.
use little
Last
glasses and I drink a lot of them.
look, Romain is already drunk. What time is it? 2 p.m. Great.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad to hear that,
He
Roman.
still drinks wine. It's 2 p.m. He still drinks wine from this morning. That's great. That's good to know.
It's not that he started drinking early, it's just that he didn't quit from last night.
Best tequila. Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. I
Oh,
like
best tequila. My favorites, I like Fortaleza. I like Ocho.
Siete Leguas. What is this one? The Siete
Sete Linguas is very good.
Legas.
Uh, even Don Julio is very nice tequila.
Don't buy the crappy stuff like Sosa and Cuervo and all this cheap stuff. Oh my God.
No, they're made in a way that's not really that great.
No, it's expensive, by the way. Good tequila is really expensive. Okay, like really expensive. And I
It's not
love
as
to.
expensive as good whiskeys, though.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, I mean they're pretty affordable, really. I mean Fortaleza gets pretty steep, but I think
So you know you guys, if you're around at Cesar, they have like tons of tequila, right?
yeah, come in and try one. That's the best thing to do when you're trying to figure out what brand you like to have in your house. Go to a bar because you can try different things for a lot less money,
Yeah,
and then you find the
yeah,
one that you like the best, and then you can go buy a bottle
yeah.
or keep coming to the bar, which is what we'd rather have you do.
All right,
So,
people, this is it. So, James, remember last week we said we were going to talk about something next week.
yes.
What are we going to talk about next week? And can you write it down?
If we ever remember what we were supposed to talk about this week, we'll talk about it next week. But
Uh,
but we will be back next Monday. Maybe we'll do another demo. And we keep promising this, but I promise you it's going to happen. We're going to start having guests on the show.
Yeah, yeah. No, we have a list of guests. We have to invite them, and then on weekly basis, we're gonna have some cool guests, just like we used to.
We're going to have butchers, bakers, chefs,
Pastry chef,
pastry chefs,
fake,
cheesemakers,
fake chef,
brewers, all kinds of people. It'll be really fun.
winemakers.
Winemakers. We know some good winemakers.
Wine drinkers. We need some wine drinkers.
Yeah, well, that'll be easier to find.
All right, people. So thank you, guys. Thank you, all of you, again.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves.
Don't promise anything. I'll see you at the bar. See you, man.
Okay.
Bye-bye, guys.